Playing something, man.
We want to hear you play something, man.
Not right now, man. I'm high.
Hey everybody, it's Dylan, and just wanted to jump in here real quick and give you a little outline for the rest of the episode, since it's a little bit different. The first 20-25 minutes or so is a recap of Desertfest New York, which was held earlier on in the month, and then we're going to jump to an interview with Kent from WoFat after that. So please enjoy the rest of this chapter. Obviously, Desertfest did not happen the last 2 years because of the pandemic, but I did go to the inaugural event in 2019 that was held at the Well. Does not exist anymore, RIP. I liked that venue. So now it is held at the Knockdown Center in Queens. Everybody was saying Brooklyn, but I'm pretty sure it's like right on it's on that like border area. But still had the Thursday pre-party. So now originally it was just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then they bumped it up to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday with the pre-party again at St. Vitus, which I've talked about ad nauseum on the podcast and going. But needless to say, Desertfest New York was the first big gig that I was going to after 2.5 years of the plague fucking everything up. And so I was excited and I was a bit anxious because I was going to be photographing the festival or a festival for the first time. And I was like pretty geared up for that. Turned out to be a little bit of an odyssey, if you catch my drift. Let's just say there were some miscommunications that kind of held me up at the beginning of the day on Friday at the Knockdown Center. And we'll just kind of leave it at that. But everything, as far as I was concerned, by the end of the weekend was fine. I wound up having a good time. But the first night went off without a hitch. It was at, local watering hole, St. Vitus. They were doing the Thursday pre-party. That's just become the norm for most festivals now. And the lineup was Druids, Freedom Hawk, Valley of the Sun, who had to step in at the last minute to fill in for somebody who I don't remember. I think it was Planet of Zeus. And New Jersey's own Atomic Bitchwax. Just like solid stoner rock appetizer for the weekend.
Oh yeah.
It was nice to see some folks I hadn't seen in a little while. Met some, new people that I had kind of just like known through doing the podcast. It was a good night. I had a good time. Didn't really get too crazy or whatever. So then Friday rolls around at the Knockdown Center. I was taking the train out there. It's like a 15-minute walk from whatever. Like I said, a little bit of a snafu, but whatever. But once all that was dealt with, I bolted to the photo pit because Black Tusk was on, and I was really excited to see them because I think Black Tusk fucking kicks ass. They're swamp metal rockers from Savannah, Georgia, so they have that sludgy ass. They're a little bit more deathy, I guess, than some of the other ones. They were really good, and I was just really fucking excited to see them. I wasn't really sure what they through the weekend they were not clearing the photo pit after a certain amount of songs, so I just was all right, I'm just gonna see when people tend to vacate. It was kind of around 3 or 4 songs. If there was something really exciting going on or something really interesting, we stuck around for a while, or sometimes there was overlap and people came later. Once I got about 3 songs worth of pictures, I spent most of the rest of the set on the barrier, and I was just so fucking I needed it. It was fucking so good. They kicked ass.
Awesome.
They fucking kicked ass. They were super good. Only saw a little bit of my friends in Leather Lung, but they're always good. Saw about a song from them. But after Black Tusk, I boogied over so there were 2 stages. There was the main room, which was just like a big open space in like this old refurbished warehouse or whatever the fuck it was originally. And then there was just like, they turned all these other little rooms in there into little other venues. So they had this like little side room past the merch area. And it was kind of gross in there for most of the weekend because it was just small and there were a lot of bodies, and they turned the smoke machine on a lot too, even though like before they even turned it on, it was just, there was so much just like human, it's kind of disgusting. Like human moisture just started to look like a sauna. It was kind of nasty.
Yeah.
If the room was like at sauna level for Leather Lung, it was like by the time I got back, full on swamp mode. Like I only lasted a little bit in there. And I saw another band there, this band Geezer from the Hudson Valley. And I could only last a little bit in there too for the first night. I was like, God damn, man, it is just like, it is moist in here. So, and it was a little tough because it was like overcast that day, I think. And there was this late afternoon glare that was really fucking up the ability to take pictures. Like it was tough for me with my setup because I don't have the most like complex camera with the lenses, you know. I ain't no fucking Tim Bugby. I don't have that kind of money.
The filters and stuff.
Yeah. I ain't no tinfoil biter. So it was a little tough.
I saw some cool pictures from her actually from Desertfest. Taking pictures of Reed doing his little guitar machinations backstage.
Tomoko is fucking amazing. You know, she was recently on Diary of Doom, and her photos of bands and like what she can like do is fucking unreal. It's crazy. So it was a little tough to navigate, but it got better throughout the weekend actually. So back at the main stage, Mothership was priming to take off, and launch they did. They're a really fun band to photograph because they're really animated. So I think I got some pretty great pictures of them. We'll see. I'm still editing all of them at the moment. I took a little bit of a break there, caught up with my friend Dave from Made in Brooklyn, and made friends with this band Broom, who was going to be playing on Saturday before I dove back into the pit for one of my all-time favorites, Orange fucking Goblin. And like I've seen Goblin before, but like it was just fucking rad to see them again because they're awesome.
Yeah, they rule. And that band, Broom, fun fact is I just checked them out the other day because people were posting about them from Desertfest.
Yeah.
I liked it. Pretty badass.
But yeah, Ben Ward is quite possibly the largest man to ever walk the planet. Or one of, at least, because I had to like sneak by him, and like, man, he is just like a tank. He is one of the largest people on the planet. He's huge. He's like wrestler stats.
He dislocated a dude's shoulder with a high five.
Yeah, I remember that.
It's pretty sweet.
It's insane. I dipped out for a quick dinner break. I wound up eating fucking souvlaki 3 days in a row, and let me tell you, whew, that was. I think by the second souvlaki, my body was like, you need to do something about this, sir. And then I hooked it back for John Garcia and the Band of Gold, who was filling in for Monster Magnet because they had to drop off. Dave Windorf had a back injury, so and I was like interested to see what he was gonna do, and I was very pleasantly surprised when he just started dropping Kaya's tunes on us.
That's sick.
Dude, I never thought I'd get to see 100 Degrees or Green Machine in the wild, but I fucking did. So thank you, John Garcia.
Dope.
And like, he sounded really good. And when I was taking pictures, my friend Eitan was there. He was up on the barricade. He was just like, dude, just look at the set list. And I looked on, and I was like, and I only told him one Kaya song, and he was like, they're playing 100 Degrees? Yes! And then it was just fucking 8 Kaya songs.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. So,
that's dope.
And then after that, Corrosion of Conformity wrapped up day one. So I stuck around for just a few songs. They actually sounded really good. But Mike Dean, the bassist, like, clearly having a great time. He's amazing. He is a phenomenal bass player. And he plays it in such a weird manner. He's a noodle man. Like, he's like, looks like he's made out of noodles. Yeah, and then I dipped out. I had called a night. Also, I had the chance to get a free ride home, so I took advantage of it.
Oh, there you go.
So then Saturday rolled around.
And I don't know, like it's funny, like a lot happened that day, but I felt like I didn't have like as much to say. Like everything just like went smoothly. Everything kind of like, it was very much back and forth. I had a lot of time to chill with people, which, you know, it's always great. It was like raining a lot that day, so I didn't go outside that much, but I still like chatted. Maybe I didn't chat with as many people as I thought I did because I was like just taking pictures and shit. So yeah, if day one was for the stoner rock crowd, day two was like pretty weird and eclectic. You know, like Green Druid, Somnuri, and Warhorse brought the heavy. You know, Warhorse was fucking great. Obviously, I was talking to Terry for a while. You know, and talked to Jerry for a little bit. I still haven't talked to Mike. I should have introduced myself, but I didn't. He always seems like he's like very focused on doing stuff.
Yeah.
Drummers, I guess. I don't know. Mike, I love you. But yeah, good to see them. And it was funny because Warhorse opened the day, and you know, there were people there watching them, and they started, and you know, they sounded great and everything. And my friend Craig had said, he's like, yeah, I started looking around, and there was like nobody there. And it was just because
it was early, right?
It was just because the small room had started before them, and once that started to wind down, people came out, and there was a nice big crowd for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It was really great to see them again. Fucking Warhorse rules, obviously.
Best band ever.
Green Druid was really good. It was great to see my friends in Somnuri. My buddy Justin, you know, I did an episode with him. They killed it. It was the first time I got to see them. And then this band Cloakroom played, and I kind of forgot, like I had forgotten like how fucking like chill this band is, like very lo-fi. In the main room on the main stage, pretty new band. I'm telling you, dude, when they were playing, it was so quiet you could hear a pin drop, like besides the music. Like that's how fucking silent the audience was, and people were super into it.
What kind of music was it?
It was like doom. It was like doomgaze, I guess is what you would call it.
Like hum?
Even more like sort of ambient, like post-rocky than hum. There's not as much like fuzz and like weird effects. Riffage. There's not as much riffage. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was strange. And then Broom played, and they have kind of that, you know, they have that like cellist and
yeah.
You know, obviously like a woman singer, and she kind of reminded me of I don't know. I just kept thinking of
Grace Slick.
No, not Grace Slick. I kept no. I kept thinking of Portishead. I was
okay.
Band. It's not trip hop, but there's a shade of it there. It was kind of hard to describe. Maybe because they're like a little off kilter. You know, they're just like off the beaten path, a little bit different.
They're definitely like, because I was expecting like a super heavy, because everybody was like, oh, check this band out. I was like, oh, this band, it looks interesting. So like a
little more
I don't know what I was thinking. I was thinking something heavy, like really super heavy, but then I was like, oh, wait a minute, this isn't super heavy. It's more cool, more chilled out.
Yeah.
You know, but jam, like there's some like jammy parts to it. But
yeah, and like just super nice people. But yeah,
that's the best part.
And people were just silent and patient, and then breaking out into like massive applause for these bands. It was really wild. So
that's cool.
Then Inner Arma played, and that was fucking insane. And I love Inner Arma; they're one of my favorite bands. I love that frontman; he's amazing. Yatra played, so there was like it was nice to get some like death and extreme metal in there, you know, just to kind of shake things up. You know, it was just sort of nice. I think everybody needed that after the first day because it was just like so much like stoner rock stuff. So after a quick break for food and laughs and some friends, I was back at the small stage for Silvertube, which is like kind of a successor to New York's greatest contribution, or one of New York's greatest contributions to Doom, Typo Negative. So like Kenny Hickey is the one in the band, and he was in Typo. The room was basically impossible to photograph because of the lighting. It was like completely black, but they had all the strobes on to, you know, and it was all green. So it kind of had that like Typo vibe. You know what I mean?
Oh, okay. Do they hearken to any Typo song?
I don't think they
play?
played
I've never
any,
seen them. I've never seen them play.
I don't think they played any Typo covers. I was only there for a little bit.
I wouldn't
And,
imagine they would. I would imagine if anything, they would do like a little heart, like a little tease or something.
I don't know.
You know what I mean?
They're
Like,
sort of like a bit more of an industrial band. I felt so.
so they have keys too.
They had a key. Yeah, they had a keyboard player.
Okay. Is it Josh Silver? On
I
keys
don't
from
believe.
Typo.
I don't believe so. Okay, let me rephrase that. Silvertomb is Kenny Hickey and Johnny Kelly, who were in Typo Negative.
Okay, yeah, the drummer, yeah.
Yeah. Hank Hell, but that's the thing. Johnny Kelly didn't play. He was not available.
So they had a different drummer.
It was actually Frank from Metal, the guy who runs Metal Injection.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So he filled in, and the rest of the band is Hank Hell, Joseph James, and Aaron Joos, Joos of Imperium. That's the clarification on that. But it was kind of funny too, because at one point, like, fucking, like, they played like their, I don't know, it was like their second song, and Kenny's just like so amazingly New York, like he just drops some New York tune, and he just goes on, he's like, "Hey, can we turn a fucking light on in here? Cause I can't fucking see shit." And then the light comes on, and he goes, "Thank you," which I think he was actually being sincere, but he doesn't know any other way to speak when he's in the zone. And then they did like a little light flicker as a hey, you know, which I thought was really fun. Torch came on the main stage, and like just prior to the event, Steve Brooks announced that he was going to be departing Torch after the tour later this year with Meshuggah. And then when I'm like watching them getting ready, I'm like, I think they're performing as a 3-piece, and they were, and I was like, shit, oh boy, is this because of like band turmoil? And it was the other guitarist, Jonathan Nunez, but Steve confirmed it simply and regretfully he had COVID, so he couldn't be there. And they killed it. Like, the rest of the set was all smiles from the band and the crowd, and it was a true testament to their performance. And
Steve didn't play?
No. Steve played, the other guitar
okay.
player.
The other guy.
Yeah.
Okay, I see.
But, like, it's a testament to their performance and role in the history of heavy underground music, because members of Inner Arma and John Maisley from Baroness were just watching them from the pit and just fucking rocking out. Like, the guys in Inner Armor were also completely wasted. So they pulled out this, they found a giant stick. Like a gigantic
I saw pictures
stick.
of the stick. Yeah, I saw pictures of
They
the stick.
found that and were just holding it up in the air.
Yeah.
I don't know where they found it, but they did. And they were just, it was crazy. I've never seen this before. I'd never seen anything like that before. And by that I mean, like, I've never seen someone just pull out a big stick at a concert. But it had been such a long time since I saw people just like, not just fans, but band members, like, super excited to see another band. And yeah, it was wild. Like, it was, you could tell people were like sad, but also really happy. Baroness rounded out the evening. It's been a while since I'd seen them, but like after a few songs, I was very much going back to like when I first saw them in Pittsburgh, which was not long after their own like personal disaster with their bus accident. They were so fucking tight. Like, they were fantastic. I was really blown away by how good they sounded. And they bounced back and forth between heavy classics and newer stuff, some more delicate stuff. It was just like a little bit for everybody. And they just sounded super tight. John made a very passionate speech thanking the organizers and the fans for staying with them over the last 2 years. It was very touching. Kind of reminded me like why I will always love this band to some degree, you know, like, and John didn't have his guitar tuned 100% for the encore, and he started playing it, and after like maybe 2 seconds he just went like, ah! And they were like, we got to do it again. But then he tuned it and it sounded good. Like, that couldn't even affect it. And I'm sure you've seen plenty of bands do that where you're just like, fuck.
Oh yeah.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, plenty.
Last day, my feet fucking hurt, but whatever. And everything just kind of was like clockwork. I got there shortly after Greenbeard started their set. Hot Texas boys for lunch. four of them, minus shirts, and at least one in Daisy Dukes. They were a lot of fun. And then I checked out Left Lane Cruiser because you were like, you got to check them out. And I thought they were good. And I thought it was great that they threw in like just a really out of left field band that was, you know, fucking heavy blues with a goddamn washboard of all things.
Right?
Yeah,
Fucking
they were
badass,
good.
right?
They played some R.L. Burnside. They played a lot of old.
Nice,
classic
dude.
shit. Yeah,
Oh, that's dope.
yeah.
I fucking love R.L. Burnside, Junior Kimbrough, all that Hill County blues shit. Those fucking dudes,
They were really good.
badass motherfuckers. Yeah, that's sweet, dude.
And then in terms of new arrivals, or at least newer bands on the scene, and I hadn't seen them before, Mother Iron Horse fucking killed it. At the very least with the intro song, it just built in such a lovely trotting manner before it fucking unloaded. It's fucking rad. So by the third day, the sound in the small room had been perfected. And they also introduced themselves by saying, "We are Mother Iron Horse, and a woman's body is her own fucking business." I just thought that was fucking rad. Big business, brought the business as usual on the main stage, but it was kind of difficult to overshadow what may have been the unexpected hit of the weekend, which was Stinking Lizabeth, led by the legend Yanni Papadopoulos. The fucking crowd ate them up. They were enamored by them, and they were fucking amazing. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the freedom from lack of vocals or just the fact that, holy fucking shit, they absolutely stole the show. They were fucking amazing. People were going ballistic. Like, it was so loud. Like,
That's awesome.
jaws, like, mouths just hanging open.
Yeah, they're like that. Yeah, I've seen them play like probably maybe 4 or 5 times, all opening for Clutch on the same tour. So I saw them like a bunch of days in a row. You know what I mean? And I saw every type of reaction to that band, from people walking straight up like being like, I don't want none of this, and just walking out, or you know, people like, you know, just loving it. You know, it's they're quite a sight to behold. I'll tell you, it's fucking Yanni's man.
So, bounce between Dead Meadow and High Reaper, which was kind of a fun contrast between like really nice mellow jams and you know, bombastic like stand acrobatics. Dead Meadow sounded good. They had some bass issues, I think, at first, but they got it together. Quick break for dinner, or some Flocky, and then it was up front to cross off a long overdue band, Red Fang. And I don't know. I guess people have some opinions about that. I'm of the opinion that they fucking rule because they were so good, and I like them a lot because they bring a lot of energy to their shows, and they have a lot of pretty short songs, so they can get a lot of songs into even like, you know, an hour set. I think they played like 12 songs or something like that. I love their energy. I've always felt that they were pretty unique, and I felt like they were a lot of fun and very like self-aware. Totally killer set. They sounded great. I was really impressed, and I don't know if that's just like first time seeing them kind of thing, but I stayed and watched the entire set from the side of the stage, or from the pit. I thought they were great. I did not make it out to see Telekinetic Yeti because the room was packed in there, and I just decided to make it out for the headliner, who was high on fire, and you know, not really much else to say about them at this point as a band. It's like not the first time I've seen them. It's the first time I got to photograph them. And Jeff's bass sounded amazing. Purest brass chords being worked on. Like, really magical. Really magical sound. Like, Jeff fucking rules.
Yeah, this is good.
And Cody was doing a great job as well. And then after that, I just hung out for a little bit and I went home. You know, it was a busy weekend. It was an eye-opening weekend. But I'm excited to do it again. I got to go to a festival, see some of my favorite bands from a completely new angle. I'm looking forward to another opportunity to cover, you know, another festival possibly in the future, or this one again. You know, I'd definitely be down to do it. I'm interested to see what they do next year, see how they expand or what kind of bands they bring in. Personally speaking, I'd like to see some more sludge, you know, that kind of shit, and maybe like 1 or 2 bands that are not specifically stoner or doom or whatever, and just like some other stray observations. A lot of patterns with band names on this bill. Black Tusk, Red Fang, Green Beard, Green Druid, High on Fire, High Reaper, Mother Iron Horse, War Horse, Mothership, Mother Iron Horse.
That's
Fucking
great.
crazy.
That's great.
Also, did not drink that much at the festival. Amazing how good you feel when you don't drink that much and you're attending a multi-day festival. And standing next to speakers with earplugs feels amazing. So that's my little Desertfest recap. Did you have a question about it?
Oh, I was gonna ask you about like who was kick ass, but you already covered that.
Yeah, I guess just like if I had to like boil it down to, because I've seen a lot of these bands over the years, and I've enjoyed most of their performances, regardless. So I would have to say like probably like my favorite sets of the weekend would John Garcia, Inner Arma.
Black Tusk.
Oh, I forgot to mention King Buffalo. I only saw one song by them, but I literally just saw them recently opening up for Uncle Acid. But it was my favorite King Buffalo song, Orion, and that was
that's
awesome.
cool.
And it was cool to see our friends Bill and Brian fucking having a good old time at.
Oh yeah, they love that band.
Yeah, I'd say John Garcia, Baroness, Torch, Inner Arma,
Black Tusk.
but I think in terms of like stuff that was like pretty much new to me, like I guess John Garcia was new to me and also very unique, and Baroness and Torch and Inner Arma for just like being super fucking solid and just sounding great and bringing it. I would have to say, I think it would probably be Red Fang and Stinking Lizaveta probably were like my top two favorite sets of the weekend. Maybe with like John Garcia like 3 and Torch like right after that. I think those are probably like my favorite sets of the weekend.
Black Tusk. Dylan. Black Tusk. You forgot Black Tusk. You fool.
I'm pumped you got to see some Caius live.
It was really good.
Sweet. Yeah, that's really sweet.
Yeah.
I got to see Caius Lives.
That's cool.
That was the closest I got. Yeah.
Yeah, it was cool. I saw John I didn't like say anything to him. He was at Vitus on Thursday. I saw him for a minute, and it's kind of like,
oh really?
That's what you look like in real life. It was funny. So I forget who it was.
I would have totally said.
I forget who it was who went up to me and was just like, "Hey, did you know that he's like a vet tech?" And I was like,
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
I'm like, yeah, he has like a real job.
Yeah. Live, he sounds so good. His like voice is just.
Yeah, he's just doing his funny little dance.
I like the way he sings.
Good times. Good times. Welcome, fanatics. This is the latest entry in the Diary of Doom. I'm Dylan, and join me as we look back on the rich history of doom metal and its sister sounds, based on the recounted tales of its followers. Every week, we will have a different guest to spin their yarn. You can visit the website at diaryofdoom.com, follow us on Instagram and Facebook, follow along on diaryofdoom.podbean.com, and subscribe and listen to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you have a question or whatever, you can fire off an email to diaryofdoom1968@gmail.com. Stoner rock may have originated in the southwestern deserts of the U.S., but it didn't take long for its sound to spread throughout the country. Bands from every nook and cranny were picking up the style and dropping their own flair onto it. Eventually, those riffs made their way to Texas, where everything is bigger, including the riffs. And from the same state that gave us the greatest convenience store chain of all time, Buc-ee's, it also gave us Wofat. Joining me today on Diary of Doom is Kent Stump, guitarist and vocalist for the band, and they have a brand new album out, which is the first one in 6 years, I think, right?
That is right. Yeah, thanks for having me.
No problem. Welcome. I probably shouldn't have exited out on my questions, but I am exhausted after a full weekend of Desert Fest.
I'm not surprised. I bet you are.
Yeah, it was a good time. So I actually saw Wofat back in like 2017 or 18 at a venue in Brooklyn that no longer exists. And I think also on the bill was The Well and a local band called Let It Rot. And I distinctly remember your drummer, Michael, giving the sound guy a very hard time about the drums not being loud enough.
I don't remember that, but I do remember that was like one of the hottest gigs we've ever played. I remember it was so hot that night.
It was, it was definitely a summertime show, and it was unnaturally like just disgusting.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, trying to do extra headbanging just to get air moving around my face because it was so freaking hot.
And that's something to be said for a guy that's from Texas playing in New York,
But I guess we have more AC in Texas. I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
But yeah, so it's the new album out, the Singularity. But obviously, you've been kicking it for like just about 20 years or so. At the beginning of it all, like what were your earliest experiences with music? Did you come from a musical family or did you discover it on your own?
Yeah, I grew up in a musical family. Both of my parents are classical musicians. That like some of my earliest musical memories are like Stravinsky, Rite of Spring is one of the things I remember from being very, very young. So, we were exposed to classical music a lot. My mom taught piano lessons, so like every day, all day, there were piano students coming in and out playing piano down in our basement. And then, my dad was also a fan of big band jazz, and so that's kind of like was my first exposure to more not classical, and that led me, both myself and my brother, to playing instruments. Music kind of just was, it just was a given. It was never, I never thought about doing anything else. I mean, that as far as playing like rock and stoner rock or things like that, I didn't really sort of move towards that till later. Like I said, music has just always been everything in my life.
And like prior to starting WoFat, like, where were you and like what were you doing before you decided I'm gonna kick this fucking project off the ground?
Well, I went to a music school at UNT, University of North Texas, and I was a jazz major. Went to school there. My plan was to be a jazz musician, and as when I was at school there, as you do when you go to college, you make a lot of new friends that are from a lot of different places and have a lot of different backgrounds. They turned me on to lots of music that I didn't know about before, and I started listening to more blues and like punk rock. This was in the '80s, so I kind of discovered '80s hardcore, and that in turn led to heavier things like Slayer and Metallica and the more metal scene. And so in the '90s, myself and Michael, our drummer, played in a metal band in the '90s. It was more kind of main, sort of that like '90s metal, Southern Pantera-ish vibe. Although I've never that kind of that I can never pull off that kind of guitar playing really, but it was much more of a metal thing than Wo-Fat is. But then I remember in the late '90s, I discovered Fu Manchu, and that like completely like changed my whole outlook, because it was like the blues has always been something that's touched me and like drawn me towards it, whether it's like anything that's blues based, whether it's like the blues itself or whether it's like blues rock, or in jazz, the things that are a little more leaning towards blues influences have always drawn me in. And so hearing Fu Manchu, it was kind of like it had the heaviness that I wanted, but it also came from a more bluesy place than like most of the metal that was going on at the time. And of course it also like harkens back to Black Sabbath and where heavier music all came from in the first place, which was all coming out of a bluesy place. So Fu Manchu to me like kind of said, yeah, you can write really heavy riffs and it can be like funky and bluesy. So that kind of like I moved away from a more metal mindset to the stoner rock thing. The stoner rock thing led to like discovering more doom stuff like Trouble, that kind of thing. So
Do you have like a landmark album for yourself that you feel made you start thinking about music differently?
it probably like in terms of like heading towards the stoner rock thing, it probably was The Action Is Go.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first Fu Manchu record that I heard. It was like right when it came out.
Any other ones that kind of sounded like maybe you had another one there in your back pocket, like something that you were like, oh man, that's different.
Well, really, probably like Sleep Holy Mountain was like
Mm-hmm.
just mind blowing for me when I first heard that too, which is not long after discovering Fu Manchu. Like that was back in the time when stonerrock.com was a thing, which I don't know if you remember that, but like I'd go on there and just find out about all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I
But,
mean, I wasn't really around for that, and if I was, it was definitely more like the tail end. But it's one of those sort of like legacy things you read about, and like
yeah,
how this little like corner of the internet existed for people to go on and find out about these bands. And I mean, bands got signed from being involved on that website and stuff like that.
yeah, it was a cool thing, and it educated me a lot in this style of music back
So, you it sounds like you and Michael have known each other for a while, and I know you started your other metal band for a little while, but then like how did Woe Fat come together?
I guess it was around 2003. I'd been like the other band that Michael and I had kind of dissolved, and Michael had a couple kids, and then the other guys in the bands kind of had other things going on in their lives, so it just kind of naturally just dissolved. And so I had been thinking about more stoner rock types of riffs and wanting to do that kind of thing, and so I just approached Michael and asked him if he'd be interested in just jamming on some of the stuff, and our friend Tim, bass player, asked him to join in, and so we just started jamming on some ideas. And back then the thought was like, yeah, maybe let's play a few Dallas gigs and just have some fun. We never had a grand plan back then, but it ended up obviously like became something really cool, and we got to do a lot of stuff that I never would have imagined we'd get to do, which is pretty awesome. But also, back then, like shortly after we started jamming, probably 2004-ish, Matt Watkins, who's a guitar player friend of mine who is now playing with us again, he used to keep jam with us back then too, and he played on the first four songs that we ever recorded. But he just couldn't stick with it because he lives in Kansas City.
Just tough for him, yeah. Logistics.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, I mean that it plays a role in people come and go because they just have other commitments and whatnot. I mean, when I saw you, you were you've been a trio for a very, 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 very long time.
Yes, yeah.
So I had kind of like saved that question for later, but since we're just on it, with Matt having like rejoined the band on second guitar, like what's it been like to have him back in the band? Because after all these years, it's been like basically just you on guitar, and I assume if you have to do like a rhythm section, you're doing the rhythm section and the leads.
Well, the whole reason I even thought to see if Matt was interested in coming back in again, anyways, was we started, we'd finished the album up last summer, and we are starting to kind of start rehearsing with the eye towards getting back out and playing gigs again. And I was thinking, man, some of these new songs are a little bit harder to play, and also would really benefit from having a second guitar, playing some stuff that there's some things where there's these different stuff going on in the guitars. And I asked Matt if he'd be interested in just going on tour with us when we do it, and he was totally into it. But it's been cool. It has been kind of strange because it's been being a three-piece, it's a lot more freedom in a way. So I find myself, I do need to like focus a lot on like me and Matt playing together, whereas it was a little more freewheeling with just me playing guitar and then Zach and Michael doing their thing. But I think it's going to be like super powerful in a live situation on stage.
20 years in the band for you, and you it's kind of alluded to it a little bit, like, what's it been like to experience the shift in stoner rock, stoner metal, going from like this, underground movement with just like one website to now having like multiple riff fueled festivals, like just in the US alone? Probably was a more unique experience to see it like, hey, this is like kind of getting bigger, grow and evolve like alongside of it, and be like, this was once this tiny thing and now it's this like global network of people.
Yeah, it's been pretty amazing, really. I mean, in some ways I kind of feel like I didn't I just feel like I was kind of always inside it, so it was hard to like realize that it was becoming a lot bigger, maybe outside of the people that were aware of in the genre. But I mean, I remember back in the early days when we first started playing gigs, like in Dallas and around Texas. The scene was a lot smaller, but it really got really active pretty quick, especially like with the Sword coming out and bands in Austin. I mean, there were some great stoner rock bands in Austin back in the early 2000s, and Dixie Witch and Tia Carrere's been around for a long time. But so like there was always kind of a scene in Austin, but it spread like statewide fairly quickly to where there's like lots of great bands all over the state. But like I remember when we first started playing, like I knew about Roadburn and thought, man, that'd be awesome to do that someday. And then we actually got to do it, and it was actually our first European show that we ever played. And I remember when like we showed up at Roadburn, and didn't really know what to expect, but then we get there and I was just like blown away to see like a couple thousand people that were like total fans of the music that I'd never seen in the US before anywhere. And like we played a couple smaller festivals in the US before that, but it's like I didn't know that there was like a scene like there were that many people that were into anywhere. But so that like really like blew my mind. And then you know it was that was the case that whole tour. You know, like we played Desert Fest, and it was just like, wow, this is awesome. Europe is like totally into this music. And then it was, I think, you know, probably because of the internet and the fact that it has become kind of an online community of people worldwide. You know, America, that was when like Psycho started becoming a thing. Like I guess it was what 2015 or whatever. Like it was Psycho California to start with, and then that just like you know I think has really helped bring up the scene in the U.S. That and you know now there's Desertfest New York. So the fact that there are these festivals that are like kind of doing a European style thing and making it a big deal.
Yeah, I mean it's wild like what's just popped up over the years. You know, I'm going at the end of the month, I'm going to Maryland Death Fest and they're I think calling it quits after like 25 years, you know, like
Yeah,
they kind
yeah,
of, you know, I'm sure there were others, but like I know they were kind of like the biggest, closest thing to like a European curated style festival for a long time. And they had a very diverse lineup for many, many years. But yeah, I definitely agree. And I love the European approach to it. And Europe goes very hard for these bands. And I know it's a lot easier for US band. I mean, I don't know about right now, but I know it's easier for US bands to have a bit more success in Europe and to do something like that than it is here. It's always some fucking pain in the ass to, you know, bring someone from across the pond over
yeah,
here and whatnot. Thus, you get kind of stuck seeing a lot of the same old bands and whatnot
yeah,
if someone has to drop off and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, shit happens and you know, you move on to the next thing. But yeah, I agree. And it's been a really unique scene to step into and discover more and kind of like find and pick apart the layers. And it's like, you know, very much like the music itself, it's very thick and
yeah,
resilient and it probably isn't going anywhere anytime soon.
yeah. I hope not. I doubt it.
Did you ever have a moment where you're like, hey, this is actually like working out? I assume it was probably like playing Roadburn. You're like, hey, this is like kind of like going in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, really, there was that like that. Yeah, Roadburn that was just a epiphany kind of experience for me. Just like, wow, I've actually done this really cool thing, and but you know, it's been cool that we've been able to keep going and keep doing more cool
Mhm.
stuff. And you know, we went to Australia, New Zealand, and you know, and it's just like, wow, it's just really amazingly cool that things have worked out like this. You know, playing just some stuff that we we dig and we think is cool, and so it's cool that the other people dig it too. You know, because it's we're not trying to write you know something that's gonna sell. You know, we're not thinking about that. We're just writing music that we dig.
Now, besides being a guitar player, you're also a recording engineer, and looks like you're recording this from your studio. And you know, I know this is like essentially your, excuse me, I know this is essentially your day job. Do you ever have days where you're like, man, this sucks. I wish I was out on the road, and then like vice versa, like, man, this sucks. I wish I was back at the recording studio.
Yeah, yeah. There's probably days of both. Yeah. You know, it's funny. Like being on the road to me, like we don't tour a whole lot just because it's not possible for us to. Like, you know, like I can't myself. I can't be gone too long, or the studio's not going to be able to stay open. But you know, it's like when we do go on tour and we like actually get on the like it's always stressful beforehand for me. But then once we get like we're on the road and we're going, it's like it's awesome and I love it. And then like when I get home, it's like, man, that's so exhausting. And you know, I don't know if I can do that again, but it's sort of always this kind of like once I'm doing it, it's totally amazing. And it can kind of let go of like other kinds of stress once you're out on the road, thinking about the next gig and playing the next gig. And you know, it's easy to not worry about a lot of stuff on the road. But you know, in the studio, yeah, I mean, there's definitely times where you know, because I can do all kinds of sessions, all different, you know. So there's definitely some sessions that are kind of a beating. But it's like, you know, that's the way life is. And you just gotta pay the bills, deal with what comes through the door. You know, engineering is something that I really love doing, mixing. I love the whole start to finish tracking, mixing, mastering, the whole process is something I really enjoy doing, and I love working on different styles of music too. And that's one thing about our studio. It's pretty varied stylistically.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine that's good because then you're not just pigeonholing yourself to like, I'm only gonna record stoner rock bands, and
Yeah.
it's like that kind of limits the amount of people that you're gonna be able to work with and the amount of clients. And if you can do that, then you're just kind of by the nature of it exposing yourself to other kinds of music, which is probably
Hmm.
beneficial for yourself. It probably keeps the gears loose and keeps things interesting and whatnot. What's like the least metal or least heavy thing you've done in your studio or you've recorded in your studio?
I've done a lot of show tune stuff. I've done some Christian gospel stuff with it's more like much more traditional, like Southern gospel. Boy, I don't even know. It's like all kinds of stuff. I mean, the last 2 weeks have been like nothing but jazz,
That's cool.
varying kinds. But yeah, classical guitar. That's probably not. Maybe it is metal actually. Yeah, I don't know, all kinds of stuff, man.
And like as a recording engineer too, like does it keep things interesting for you as a guitar player? And like, do you ever try to like, if you're recording somebody and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool, do you ever try to like incorporate that into your work at all? Or is it kind of like very much like this is work and I'm just gonna like kind of leave it as is?
Oh no, there's definitely lots of stuff that I've because I've recorded a lot of really great musicians and a lot of good guitar players, and there's a lot of things where I'll like hear somebody do something, and whether it's guitar playing or just like writing wise in terms of songwriting, or I'll be like, man, that's a cool way of doing that, or a cool idea there, and I will definitely like take some of those ideas and rework them or incorporate like the concept into the songwriting or playing. I mean, yeah, it definitely is influential on me as a musician and a songwriter. Just all of the different musicians that I work with.
So again, it's been 6 years since Midnight Cometh came out, and it's now it's been 6 albums. When you look back at the beginning of the band and look at new release, like what do you feel like besides the obvious of like losing and gaining a member, what's changed the band since then, and like how do you think it reflects on the album?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think one of maybe the biggest things is I feel like the songwriting, song structure is more refined now and more effective. I think, I feel like especially like the Gathering Dark, that was sort of a shotgun approach because it was just like that was the first album that we did, and I just had like all these songs and wanted to like fit everything on there. And I over the time over the years with the other albums, I think I have taken more of a editing eye to the songwriting to where like things where I'm like, oh, that goes too long, or that's maybe unnecessary, or that could lead somewhere else better, or things like that. I mean, I feel like in that sense, there's the new album has grown a lot in terms of the songwriting, and I also feel like in terms of the jam improvisation aspect, it's gotten more not cohesive, but more like more of like a vibe, especially with me, Zach, and Michael. Because Zach, this is the only album that Zach actually played on, the only studio album, even though he's been with us for 6 years. But he really brought a very strong personality as far as just bass playing goes to the music, and I think that's reflected a lot in the new album. It really brought another level to the music, and has a really good tasteful way of adding his own ideas musically, and things that play off the guitar riff well. I feel like you really like got some of the kind of psychedelic sensibility of some of those vibes and grooves. And so to me, I think that's a big part of why I feel like new record is so strong. The band performance of the three of us together, I feel like it's really good and better than what it had ever been before.
One thing I've always remembered Woe Fat for was like just very like big, loud album covers, and they're pretty. They each have their own unique character to them and whatnot. the one for the Singularity is just very like, that's this monstrous sort of robotic beast, you know, breathing out the logo and whatnot. And it's like kind of a thematic, it's thematic to the album in as much as like, you know, it's this technological beast. And if you've done any reading about the Singularity, it's about like the next step of human evolution and with relation to machines and whatnot. And like, you know, as somebody who works daily like around machines and like, you know, and in a touring band with, you know, guitars and tech and whatnot, like how does that make you feel in relation to, you know, doing an album about this sort of like the fear of the machines?
Well, I don't. Well, so I've got my feet in both worlds. Where like, so I guess, you know, like the studio here it's, you know, it's sort of a hybrid of old vintage analog gear and then new digital stuff. And so and you know, when I first started recording, it was like I was recording on 2-inch tape and all analog, and so I'm very familiar with both worlds, and I mean, I guess I haven't really thought about the horror aspect of technology so much in terms of recording, but aside from maybe auto tune, but um, yeah, I don't know. It's a good question because you know, like even like going Black Code kind of started the whole technological computer virtual sci-fi horror concept for lyrically, and this kind of just carries that a little bit further on. More stuff that I've read about or thought about, you know, deep fakes and all the like just crazy technological capabilities that are happening now, even like more so than they were even happening in 2013 when Black Code came out. So it's like, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess, yeah, I am surrounded by machines all day, but it's, you know, I don't really relate the two. Yes. maybe I will from here on out. I don't know.
Just wake up one day, you have like a circuit board like growing out of your arm.
Yeah.
You know, listening to the album, one thing that I felt like compared, and you know, maybe I'm wrong, I felt like it was a little less chunky than previous albums, maybe like a little bit looser, and like, you know, the songs are classically long with a lot of very intricate solos. Did the writing process change for you at all during this, you know, or was it kind of like the same old approach, and or did you like try to do something? We're like, oh, we want to try something different here. You know, let's see what we can do here. Or is this just like 20 years of working together as a band and you know exactly what you want to do?
I think part of it was having Zach playing, but also I think, you know, if I, you know, you mentioned it less chunky, which I to me, I think like when I'm writing songs, a lot of stuff is really influenced by whatever I'm listening to a lot of at the time. And I think, you know, during a lot of the, especially for some of the early first stuff that was written for the song, like, you know, I think during that period I was listening to maybe a little less heavier stuff and a little more like psychedelic-y or instrumental kinds of things that were maybe a little less metal influenced, and so that may, I think, probably influenced a little bit songwriting wise to maybe not be as metal chunkiness as, you know, some of the previous albums have been. But, you know, I think I also wanted this to be a little bit more expansive in some ways and jammy in some ways too. And also, one of the big differences on this record to me is the melodically, we go outside of a real strict blues paradigm more than we really ever have. I mean, that still is a big, huge key component to what's going on. But there's more stuff that ventures out past that. And I wanted to do that. And, you know, like I'd also been listening to a lot of like, you know, 70s fusion. And so I wanted to kind of step away from the bluesy thing just a little bit. But also I didn't want to step away too far because I wanted to kind of keep our foundation.
Right. You know, you can't like lose your identity, do 180 degrees away from what you were doing, you know, without warning, you know. Not going to put out like a 80-minute long ambient album like Blood Incantation did.
Yeah.
Which people were like, what the fuck? I liked it. And, you know, you've always kind of had running themes of like weird fiction and darker, cultier shit. Although I'm dying to know what the Snows of Banquo IV are like. I just don't know what Banquo IV is. It sounds like a Star Wars planet to me.
Well, yeah, so it is a planet.
Okay.
But so the story with that song is a friend of mine is one of the creators of an RPG, a role playing game called Mothership, which is a
Oh, cool.
sci-fi. It's a sci-fi horror RPG. He had asked me, and this was like, I think it was right around when not long after the pandemic started. He hit me up and said that, told me about that they were going to come out with like another module for their game. Because a bunch of modules throughout different scenarios that you play through. And he had the idea of, originally the thought was like to put out a flexi disc with a song of ours on it that went with the module. And so I'm like, yeah, totally into that. And so he gave me the storyline and basis for what the module is. And so I wrote the song kind of based on that concept. And that's the Banquo IV is the planet that's in the module. And it sort of also became, because this was written like after the pandemic started, and all shit just had gotten crazy politically, and so it kind of became not only about the RPG, but also it has like a another sort of analogous thing about disinformation and manipulating people with disinformation, and with like creating false realities, and getting people to do things that they wouldn't otherwise do. And so that kind of ties it all, it like works with the game. But of course, as usual, I can't write a short song, and so the flexi disc thing kind of went out the window. But at this point, like, it's still gonna do it, and I think it may end up becoming a like a split with like another band that'll add a song. So I'm not sure what the timeline is on that, but that's the story of that song.
That's pretty cool though. Like how he like, you're like, well, we can't do the flexi disc, so we may as well just include it on the new album. But that's neat. That's sort of like a Michael Moorcock working his way into like Hawkwind, basically.
Yeah.
I like that little bit of collaboration there. That's a neat little bit of trivia about it. With the new album, it's just a few weeks old at this point. Are you working on anything else? I know you've got some shows and coming up.
Yeah, but we are doing a Houston and Austin show in June. Then we've got a European tour that's in the works for late July and early August. And at the moment, that's all we've got. But yeah, we'll see what else we get set up after that. So we're kind of easing back into things, really.
Yeah. I mean, it's like the best approach, at this point. In terms of you being a studio engineer and whatnot, I took a quick look at some of your credits, and like Mothership, just saw them over the weekend. But you working on anything cool otherwise? Any other neat projects landed in your lap?
Yeah, like I said, I'm doing a bunch of like local jazz stuff for various different projects right now. I don't think there's nothing at the moment stoner rocky or anything, but I am pretty happy about the new Cities of Mars record that I mixed and mastered for them. I thought they did a great job with their new. They kind of changed a little bit direction with their songwriting, and the new album I think is killer. And it was a lot of fun to get to work with those guys on that record.
Nice. Kind of to go back to that, like, obviously you do a lot of local work, but like, do you have a lot of history with like European bands or other bands like reaching out to you and be like, hey, would you do this? Would you like do something with our tunes? Obviously the distance provides kind of an issue, in terms of that, but have you ever done anything like that?
But yeah, I mean, like I mixed a record for Captain Caravan, and what else? I mean, I've done a few things, mixing and mastering, probably more mastering stuff that people will send me. Like Mystic Sons, I mastered their record, and Domadora, I've mastered a couple of their albums. Yeah, I always draw a blank when people ask me things. Yeah, that's what I've been doing. But yeah, I would like to. I mean, I would love to do more of that, more stuff for people locally or remotely. It's a lot of fun.
And then besides that, have you been listening to anything lately that you've been really enjoying? Whether it's something new or something old.
I don't know if I've been listening to. Well, what I've been listening to a lot lately actually is some African stuff like Tanaroan, Mdu Mokhtar, like these Mali from Mali. It's kind of like Afro blues. It's kind of trancey, bluesy African music. And so I've actually been listening to a lot of that lately. I've been really digging the new Endless Boogie album. I actually started a playlist that I kind of regularly will put on shuffle. That's like your stoner rock, like, which to me is like late '90s, early 2000s. Just like all those bands kind of go back to that, because a lot of those earlier records I kind of hadn't listened to in a long time. So, but yeah, what else? Those are the things that come to mind that I've been listening to very recently. So. have to look through my recent stuff, but yeah.
I haven't really been listening to too much just because, like I said, Desertfest kind of like was taking up a lot of my time. But I'll say one band because I completely botched their name and their information in the last episode, which you won't hear it because it'll be edited out. But their name is, I'm gonna say it much slower this time. It's like old. It's they're from Mexico.
Like Aztec. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that
Yeah.
kind of thing. I'm gonna try to say it again. Tlaxcaltizli. You have to. I think it's one of those words that you just have to say very quickly.
I think I've heard of those guys. Hang on. I need to...
Yeah, they're like
I'll look them up.
They're a death doom band from Mexico. Their new album, it's called Zampatli. That's much easier to say, and it's really good. But other than that, I've been kind of working through, as I've been saying, my seems to be ever growing tape collection. So I popped in. There was a band who put out an album last year called Dream Unending. I got their album Tide Turns Eternal on tape. It's great. Listen to my friend John Michael's solo album Domestiquam on tape. That's really good. It's another band. They had their new album, their debut is out. I talked to them last year on the podcast. They're called Dark Meditation. Their debut album came out earlier this year. It's excellent, but I picked up their demos after I spoke with them, and that stuff would eventually go on to be the debut. But pretty cool to see that go from the demo to their really good album. Found an Edith Piaf tape in my collection for some reason.
Wow.
I don't know how it got there, but I listened to it, and I don't know if I ever will listen to it again, but it's probably important to educate yourself a little bit in Edith. And my girlfriend was nice enough to give me a Mortis tape, and that was fun to listen to. Mortis is always a fun little dude to talk about.
Nice.
Unless there's any other bands or anything that you've been enjoying, is there anything you want to plug? Obviously, new record.
Yeah, the new record, and I guess just the European tour that's coming up in late July. So, what else I mentioned is hopefully within a couple weeks I'll have vinyl of Black Code and The Conjuring repressings that Totem Cat in France is doing. Ewan told me today he's got the vinyl already. He's going to ship out some to me. I think he's putting his on sale possibly next Monday on Totem Cat on his website, and then I'll put up what we get for our inventory when it gets here, which will probably be a couple weeks. But I did. We did pre-sales for like the Gathering Dark reissue, which was supposed to be out in December, and I still don't have vinyl yet, and so it's just like killing me that I've got all these people waiting on stuff they ordered 5 months ago. So I don't know that I'm going to do pre-sales for the Conjuring and Black Code. I'll just wait till I have the vinyl. So there is that. It's pretty limited edition stuff, so like Small Stone they don't have any more vinyl of those records. Grab it while you can.
Yeah, the age-old vinyl issues that we've been dealing with for the last 2 fucking years that I'm sure everybody is so tired. I was just talking with a friend of mine in another episode, and he's just like, it's so bizarre what has affected. T-shirts, fucking TVs, fine. Yeah. No shortage of those. You want action figures? You can't get them. Like anything that's
really,
I guess anything that it involves, because I got like some limited edition stuff from a website, and I guess it's just anything that's involving vinyl is just fucking cursed for years to come now. It'll be the biggest fallout of all this nonsense. So.
Yeah.
Well, you heard it right here. Singularity is out. New WoFat first record in 6 years, and nice to have you back. And thank you for coming on Diary of Doom. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. And that'll do it for this chapter of the diary. Well, actually, I should ask too. Is there any like social media that people can follow you if you wanna, if they want to find out more and whatnot? I should put that in there, because if we don't, I will not have done my job.
Yeah, I mean the usual. Facebook, I think it's WoFat Riffage on Facebook. I think it's the same thing on Instagram. Wofat Riffage. Those are our social media things. Bandcamp is a good place. Or wofat.bandcamp, whatever that is. I mean, it's a good place to get merch and you can buy downloads there too, of course. So yeah, we've got t-shirts, vinyl as far as the new album, which actually again will hopefully show up like within a week or so. CDs, all that stuff. Get on our Bandcamp page or our website, which is wofat.net.
Sweet. Now I've done it correctly.
Hey everybody, Dylan here to break the fourth wall and just let you know that Diary of Doom is going on hiatus for a little while. Since launching the podcast in November of 2019, I've been going at it on a weekly basis straight through the pandemic, and quite frankly, I need a little break to recharge. I am the only person working on DoD despite how I promote it. That's all for kicks. And that includes setting up the recording sessions, listening to the music, doing research, prepping questions, doing the actual recording, editing it, graphics, social media, just a general one-man wrecking crew approach to it. When I first conceived the idea for the podcast, my intention was to not just interview bands, but other members of the underground heavy music scene. I really just thought that the closest people that I could speak to were fans. That's really what I wanted to do, was to kind of like start there and, work the way up. And over time that has changed to having far more opportunities to speak with musicians than I expected. Not to mention that the pandemic had everybody pretty situated for a while and allowed them more time to do something like a podcast. And by no means do I want to diminish any of those artists I spoke with, because I've been allowed some really special and meaningful opportunities from doing it. However, I was starting to find myself feeling like it was turning a bit into work, which made me recall a comment Kevin Smith once said about his show, Smodcast. And that's, once something starts to feel like work, it might be time to stop. And I don't know if I would take it that far, but I was starting to lose interest in the thing that I was once very excited about, which leads me to my next point. Last May, I was let go from my job on the eve of moving from New Jersey to New York. And as I have been looking for a new job, I decided to launch a Patreon to not just bring in a little money, but to try and get back to what DoD was about and explore other paths, such as talking about another thing I am very passionate about, movies. Obviously, I know this is a very niche corner of two already niche subcultures, so I didn't anticipate to be raking it in by any stretch. What I have been thinking about more is if operating the Patreon is actually worth it in the end, when I could just be sharing these great chats with people for free. As such, I've opted to can the Patreon, and I will be re-releasing the episodes, including the Movies from Green Hell episodes, as free content for everybody once the podcast gets back on track. But I do want to do a special shout out to Nathan Sizemore, August West, and Tom Childers for throwing their support behind the Patreon during its brief existence. This also coincides with something I've kind of figured out about myself personally, and that is that I have essentially been in a steadily growing depression for probably the last month and a half. And I think it's all a combination of burnout, lack of a secure job, the current state of the US plus the world, and any other number of things that I don't necessarily feel like discussing here. All of that combined leads to me lacking interest in DoD. And if I'm not in the right state of mind for this, then that affects me as a host. And that's a disservice to both the guests and the people that listen to and support the podcast. And I cannot in good faith continue on in that manner if it is affecting how I present the show. I don't want anybody to think that Diary of Doom is going away. I still love this podcast and all of the friends I have made along the way, whether from the heavy metal scene or doing their own podcast about their own thing or whatever it is. And I'm immensely proud of being able to put out 133 plus episodes. In the meantime, I'll still be going to shows and snapping pictures when I can, but I want to make sure that I'm putting in 100% of my efforts to deliver a good show for the listeners. And after 2.5 years of nonstop podcasting, I just am not sure that I am doing that. So with all that said, it's time for me to take a little breather. I'll be attending my first and seemingly last Maryland Death Fest this weekend, and then parking my ass on the beach in Asbury with a rum ham shortly thereafter as summer starts to kick into gear. I want to thank everybody who has listened, reached out, and been featured on the show, and all the people that have helped me out and supported in some way, shape, or form along the way. It's greatly appreciated, And obviously I wouldn't have been able to do it without you providing the time to to help me out or to come on as a guest. Again, thank you for that, and I will see you in a little bit.